As the four-string banjo came of age during the jazz age of the 1920s, many new banjo stars were born as well. While iconic names such as Eddie Peabody and Harry Reeser captured the nation's banjo fancy, when people talked banjo in Detroit, it was Eddie Collins who had become their own banjo king. Born in Toronto, Ontario in 1903, D. Edward Collins grew up in Detroit and began his musical life with a succession of hand-me-down ukuleles. His first banjo came with his father's approval on the condition that Eddie would pay for the instrument himself out of the $2 he made each week at the family's cigar store. With interest leaning towards classical music, Collins began studying the French horn while still in high school and was ultimately offered a position with the Cleveland Symphony Orchestra. Although an auto accident which injured his lip robbed him of a career in classical music, it also propelled Eddie Collins' career as a gifted banjoist and guitarist. During the 1930s, Eddie Collins, playing both banjo and guitar, had become a fixture in Detroit's lively radio and dance orchestra scene. As half of WNBC Radio's Tin Horn Cavaliers, Collins even ventured into musical comedy with a very young Danny Thomas. But it turned out to be a high school friend, an up-and-coming band leader known as Art Mooney, who would have the greatest impact upon Eddie Collins' career. In 1948, Art Mooney's orchestra had a million-selling hit recording of a 1920s era tune called I'm Looking Over a Four-Leaf Clover, which featured the banjo in a musical arrangement similar to the Philadelphia Mummers. Unable to argue with national success, Mooney now needed a full-time banjo player and thought of his old high school friend. With the band riding high, Eddie Collins joined Art Mooney's orchestra in 1948, touring the country as the headline act in theaters and concerts. During his years with Mooney's band, reviewers around the country often noted the highlight of the stage show to be Collins' banjo feature. Following the success of Four-Leaf Clover, Mooney's orchestra scored another hit with the Roaring Twenties standard Babyface, giving Eddie Collins the national recognition he richly deserved. Returning to Detroit as a celebrity, Collins was now an in-demand entertainer. In addition to appearing with legendary performers such as Louis Armstrong, when the Detroit Symphony needed a banjo player to enhance George Gershwin's Porgy and Bess, it was Collins who got the call. Representing pinnacle success, Eddie Collins' 1953 engagement at Chicago's Chez Paris was both a career highlight as well as a milestone in banjo history. Although the demand for live entertainment dwindled in the early 1970s, Eddie Collins remained busier than most, appearing in nightclubs, on radio, and at the very first Little Caesars Pizza Parlor. A later career highlight came in 1972, when Arthur Godfrey invited Eddie Collins to appear on his show. In addition to holding his own, trading comic repartee with Godfrey and fellow guest Teresa Brewer, Eddie stole the show when he and Godfrey paired up for an impromptu banjo duet. When Eddie Collins passed away suddenly in August of 1972, he left behind a loving family, an infectious wit, and a musical legacy that will live on anytime the word banjo is mentioned in Detroit.